Hey, folks, welcome to the Beans and Dice podcast. I'm Wayne.
And I'm Mike.
And it's a podcast about how we game.
You're listening to the Beans and Dice podcast, a podcast about how we game.
I know it's been a while. Happy New Year in 2024 to everyone out there. I know we kind of took a couple months off here at the end of the year. Just got to say, hey, life gets in the way sometimes, right?
Yeah.
So we're trying to get back into it a little bit. Mitchell's actually taken a step back for a while. He's, y'all know, or many people who watch the show or have listened before, they know that Mitchell is a theater teacher in the Louisiana area. So he's got a lot of shows. He handles like a whole school district's worth of theater programs. So he's taking a break, and I have a new sort of co-host or co-conspirator for a while at least. Mike, why don't you? I know the folks from the show know you well enough, but if you want to introduce yourself and let us know a little bit about you.
Yeah. So my name's Mike. Have my own channel, quote unquote. One mic, one game. The inside joke is there's only one game on there. So if you go there, don't expect too much. But I'm a regular contributor, I guess, on the Thursday call-in show. Even before Beans and Dice started doing that, I was contributing videos here and there, typically box openings and that type of thing. But I've kind of hopped around YouTube channels between the groups down there in Florida before I moved here to Seattle. And so I'm happy to be here and contribute to this portion of the Beans and Dice podcast. And hopefully this will be a somewhat regular thing going forward.
Yeah, I think you actually predate me by a long time as far as a member of the what has now become the Beans and Dice community. You know Rob and Carlos from work related stuff too, right? As far as you both all work in the same industry, or
yeah, I mean I've been in IT I was in IT for almost 30 years, and then moved over into the insurance side of things. I'm an independent adjuster, but I kind of. Once I got into that, and then Carlos, Rob, and myself, we had even more in common after that. So it's, good community to be part of. I'm glad I'm still part of it, even though I'm on the other side of the U.S. And I still try to get together with you guys anytime that I'm in the area. So.
Yeah, it was unfortunate circumstances why you came into town last year, but it was good to see you. And I know that you're planning on joining us for Dice Tower East this year.
That's the plan.
Hopefully it'll. Still not 100%. But and I know that you're diligently trying to convince members of the community to join you at Dice Tower West, which I definitely want to do. But the timing is just rough, man. It's the week before spring break down here, so it's like all my kids are all off of school the week after Dice Tower West. So maybe next year it'll sync up. If it ever syncs up, where spring break is the same week, I'm there in a heartbeat. So.
Awesome. Yeah, man, I would love to have you guys come up this way instead of me going down that way.
Yeah,
but
that's the definite goal. And now speaking of conferences or cons, game cons, I always say conferences because I go to work conferences all the time. But I know we had done a spot for the Board Game Dojo podcast on our outlook for the year, and your number one sort of New Year's wish or resolution is to get more gaming, go to more cons. Yep. And it's January 9th, and you've already succeeded, I hear, right?
Oh, yeah. It's so this past weekend, the weekend of, I'm trying to remember, I'll keep talking while I look this up, but the weekend of the 6th here in Seattle, we had OrcaCon, which is an annual con. I'll be honest, I don't remember, or I don't know how many years it's been going on, but this is the second time I've attended. It's held at the Bellevue Hilton, and its focus is primarily on being inclusive of all walks of life. So it's very LGBTQ plus friendly. Like I said, basically all walks of life, all colors of people, all nationalities, everything you could possibly think of. It's kind of targeted as a safe place for everybody to feel welcome and not feel out of place, by getting stares or however it may be. So that started on the 5th, which was a Friday, and I went all 3 days. Since I'm my own boss, I gave myself Friday off. And as far as plays, the kind of funny thing is normally I wouldn't get this many plays in over a course of months, probably. But for this year, I'm kind of looking here already for 2024. I've got 30 plays in, and a few of those I don't even have recorded because I did some prototype plays. There's also a heavy game developer presence at this con, and they had multiple tables set up for demoing their prototypes. All feedback is welcome. Kind of like the thing that I guess what
Jamie Stegmeyer does.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Yeah, kind of like that.
Stonemeyer Design Days, yeah.
Right. So it was kind of interesting to see, because I've never really been part of that before. And it was very interesting to see how these things kind of, it's like throwing spaghetti against the wall and seeing what sticks and making changes on the fly. Well, okay, well, let's just try this. Let's play one more round. Or in the middle of a round, okay, well, let's, what if we tweak this over here or try this? So it was kind of interesting to see how that process worked. And I've tried everything from, hey, somebody pitched this idea to me, I just need a few people to try it out, to we've been working on this for years and we're trying to fine tune and getting plays in that way. So it was
I was gonna say that's pretty crazy. Like, so I'm thinking back. I've been an avid board gamer for at least 24 years now. I've never done a design thing like that, where or I've never gone to a convention where there are people who have prototypes.
Right.
And I would love to do that. I would love to sit and play a couple prototypes. I probably wouldn't want to go to the design day and do nothing but prototype gaming. But I would I think that where you're talking about it at OrcaCon is where you could go and do regular games, and then you could take a break and go do some demos or some prototypes. I like that because I think as I'm playing a game, I'm always trying to figure out what's the best way to score. It's the first time I play a game, right? I think I've talked with Rob before. I feel like I'm actually really good at first game plays because I zone in on a strategy real quick and just try to rock it, right? I don't try to figure out the whole game. I just figure out one strategy. And I think that would be good. I think I'd probably be a pretty good play tester because of that, because I can zone in on something and just kind of pick it apart. But that seems interesting. I would love to play. I missed playing Roz, the Mahir Shah's new game about the Indian dance of love or whatever that's coming out at Dice Tower East. I really wanted to play it then. Talk about that. What was I know you probably can't speak openly about other people's projects, but was there anyone you're like, wow, this is going to be a cool game?
Well, one that I can speak a little more openly about was a game that's been in development off and on. I think the guys said maybe 3 to 4 years, something like that, but very off and on. It wasn't this constant development, but it was a game called Chicken Fried Dice. And, when you first sat down, I was thinking, there's a ton of dice, obviously, colors with numbers. And it looked like a Ganshan Clever type of game from, everybody's got their own sheet to write on. And it was a play on kind of like Cooking Mama, which was an old, I'm trying to remember the current type of video game that it is, where it's you're basically gathering ingredients and you're trying to feed people that are in a queue. And this is more along the lines of you're grabbing ingredients, which are your dice, and you're trying to feed, it's cards that are basically dealt out, and you're trying to feed these people that are in a queue, and each person has specific ingredients. So it's kind of like a food truck type of thing that you're running.
Yeah, that's cool.
So you get to name your truck at the beginning, and, you chuck dice, and then it's this, it's supposed to be like a free-for-all, you're grabbing 4 dice one at a time as fast as you can from a pool, and everybody around the table is doing that. So they kind of gave us this overview of how the game works and how the scoring works and how many rounds there's going to be. But, of course, because you want to get as many people in as possible, they're cutting the rounds down. And when they were explaining it the first time, immediately somebody at the table said, I really don't work well with, simultaneous grabbing from the middle of a table. Can we go around the table one at a time and like choose a die, like take your time and choose a die. And I was thinking to myself, this is how they want the game to be played.
Yeah, they want
how
the
are they
speed,
gonna
the frenziness, right? Yeah,
right. And the 3 other people that are playing, we're just kind of like, this is a demo. Like, this is how the game's supposed to be played. We're going to try it out this way. But, the developer was like, okay, yeah, we can try it, that way. And, we tried it that way for the first couple of rounds. And then, then we switched over to, grabbing. And as we're playing the game, and I'm, as I'm playing, I'm immediately coming up with ideas like, okay, well, I was expecting this and I'm getting this, and it really isn't working for me this way. And so after we finished playing, then the developers were basically like, okay, we have a couple of questions for you, but what were your thoughts? And, we're standing around and we're kind of like giving input, and, certain things they're writing down and some things are like, oh yeah, that's a good idea. And then they were asking specific questions like, when this came up, what did you think about this? And I think these 2 particular developers, one of them was Ashwin Kamath, I think is his last name. He was one of the devs that worked on The Wolves, which I keep bringing up. Yeah. And the only reason I keep bringing up is like, that's probably one of the more known games that he's worked on. All very receptive. And I know from when Carlos and Rob went to the game dev thing with Jamie, I know that their comments weren't always 100% welcome from some of the developers.
Yeah, you got to have a thick skin, right? Either
you have to.
Yeah,
you have to. And I basically told him, look, I'm going to tell you how I feel. Don't take offense to it. This is just, And they're like, no. We want to hear everything.
Yeah, I think Yeah,
go ahead.
I've listened to like the Ludology podcast where they talk about like playtesting, and even Jamie has talked about a lot. Is like, you have to be receptive to playtesters, and you have to understand that like you want negativity sometimes, right?
Sure.
Because if you only get positivity, then you're not finding the flaws, right? You need some negative in there, and then
right.
if you're only getting your friends and family to test it, you're immediately already coloring the responses. So like you gotta find strangers and get a game in front of them and take that negative. But yeah, it's good that they're receptive, because I think that was like Rob and Carlos, you said they had mentioned at the design day that like, yeah, there were some guys who were totally about it, and then there were some people that there was a game that was real rough. I don't remember what game it was specifically, and I wouldn't mention it anyway, but Rob was like, yeah, the game was real rough and it has a lot of problems with it, and when we tried to point out anything that was negative, the guy just shut it down. Yeah, well, that game's not going to go anywhere then, so that's cool.
Yeah.
So what was a flaw and a positive that you gave him?
So the positive was, I love, because they're on your board that you're writing, there's like multiple tracks, colored tracks, and they're like different ingredients, like your rice, your chicken, and as you're working down, very similar to like a Gone Shine Clever type of game, as you're working down this track, you're getting bonuses, for each thing that you're checking off. Like, I get to this point, oh, it's going to give me points. And then I get to this point, oh, it's going to allow me to change the ingredient of one of my dyes, those types of things. You can increase your queue line. I love that feel. And there was a little bit of chaining things together. Like you had like, this will give me this, which will allow me to do this, that type of thing. I love games like that because you feel like a genius, even though you're really not a genius, but you feel smart when you're doing it. And that was like, I told him, as soon as I sat down, I got the Gone Shine Clever feels, and I freaking love that game. And they're like, okay, cool, we like that. And then I would say for like one of the negative things actually goes back to the tracks. And this may have been just because they had a limited set of cards that they were doling out. So every person that you completed, there was like a bonus on the bottom of the card. And it could either be, and each person gave you like a star rating. So over rounds and over people that you're feeding, you're building up like your star rating, quote unquote, your star rating for like a food truck type of thing, up to 5 stars. But the bonus that you were getting, whether it be you can check off X number of boxes in this track, the problem that I saw was if you wanted to say, focus on your vegetables, which is one of the tracks. With what we were playing and how we were playing, there is absolutely no way to get to the end of that track. And I don't expect to do everything, and I explained that to him. But when we were done with the demo, like the most anybody had on one track was maybe 3 or 4 check marks. And there was probably a dozen, from what I could gather, per track. And I tried to explain to them, like, you're kind of stuck with, even though you get one extra card and you kind of choose between the two of them, you're stuck with whatever bonus that one person is giving you. And I kind of made the suggestion, if you put a slash and say you can choose this or this, it kind of opens up and gives you more of a choice to choose the track that you want to go down, or whatever you're trying to accomplish. And they were very receptive to that, and they were making notes when I suggested that. But that was like the one thing that kind of stuck out to me, as far as I'm not getting a choice. And I think if you offered, even if it's a 50-50 choice, it's better than you are stuck with this.
Yeah. And allows you to diversify too, because other people will choose different options as they finish cards. Now, like the menu or like the truck or food truck or your main thing, that board, was that the same for everybody? Because I can imagine, like, I'm thinking there's another game, an old game called Lord of the Fries, where you're kind of like running a right. Have you know that game? I don't know if you know
I don't, but
okay.
I love the name.
It's Lord of the Fries, and it's like you're zombies or you're running restaurants, but like everyone gets a different restaurant, and as you're passing the ingredients around, you're trying to grab ingredients to fulfill the recipes in your restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
It gets points based on that. So like there's like a Chinese food restaurant, a Mexican food restaurant, an Italian restaurant, or
gotcha.
But it was the chicken fried rice? It was basically just all the same kind of theme. Would that necessarily get old, or do you think there's room for them to kind of have different scoring cards for different people or different restaurant types? Or
so, yeah. So at the top of each, so there was a slight difference between each card, where before every round, 3 black dice would be rolled, and you could put the numbers in any order that you want. So it would like kind of go around each round. Each person would get a turn, and they would be like the quote-unquote head chef or whatever. And they would roll the 3 dice, and on the top of their board, they had 3 ingredients. And those ingredients were different and in different orders per card. And what they could do is, let's say they rolled the dice and it was like a 3-5-6. They could put those in any order, because there was a specific way that you would feed your people in line. You had to go like lowest number to highest number in that, or like an increasing order of number based on the ingredient. And this would allow you to put those numbers in any order for yours. So if you rolled like 3-5-6, you could do like a 6-3-5, and it would be rice, chicken, vegetables. On somebody else's card, it might be vegetables, whatever, seasoning, chicken. So there may be a little bit of take that, but it's not an intentional take that. You're kind of helping yourself out, and you may be helping other people out, but you also may be taking the quick little bonus at the beginning away from them. So in that regard, it was slightly different. But by you saying that, that's kind of interesting. Like, I would probably want a little more variety between the two between the players' cards, other than just the 3 mix mash, ingredients at the top. But yeah. I think the replayability is going to be pretty high because of the people in line. Right. Every person is different. Right. Every person had a different number of ingredients, like from 3 to 5 ingredients, and the bonuses were different. So I think that's where the majority of the replayability is going to be coming from.
And if it does get produced, there's expansions, because you could bring in new guests, new restaurants, new types of food, new dice. You could do tons of this. Yeah, it's like infinitely. And I like that. I like, I do like food games, and because I play viticulture, I play brew crafters and distilled, and I have the Lord of the Fries game, and we have Kitchen Rush, and there's a couple. So I enjoy those kind of games, because there's a lot of variety there, and it brings in a theme that I don't know. I'm a foodie, right? So I like that kind of stuff. My wife is a foodie too, so that's
Right.
pretty cool. I like it. Yeah, I definitely would love to do some demoing. That sounds cool. But
Yeah.
any other real highlights from OrcaCon that you don't want to bring up to tease people to join our Thursday night live call-in show?
Yeah. Yeah, just kind of touching on them briefly, which, we'll probably go into more detail, like you said, on the Thursday call-in show. So Mick and Starla were there from Our Family Plays Games. They're definitely a larger YouTube channel than Beans and Dice. I think they're coming up on 30,000 subscribers.
Something
I
like
think
they've been on I know they were on like the news in the Midwest a couple of times. They've been all over. It's really cool. They've become ambassadors to the game community, and I think that speaks to, like you said, that OrcaCon focuses on inclusivity, which is a good thing, right? I mean, like I've been in gaming a long time, and I can remember. I use DragonCon as an example. So I've been going to DragonCon for 20 plus years now. And when I first went, there was maybe 30,000 people. So it was big con even back then, 20, 30,000. But it was probably, it had to be 90% white men,
male.
Right, and white men, right? And it was like, and over the last 20 years, it's really diversified. And like, my wife and kid this year went to a meetup for the Black Geeks at Dragon. They have all these big photo shoots at DragonCon, right?
Yeah.
And there's the Star Trek group, and then there's the Marvel group, and there's all these different groups, and it was just the Black Geeks, and it was just like everyone African American descent and friends, and it was crazy because I loved it because when I went there last year, she started going last year to it, and I went. I was in my Star Trek uniform. She was in her Star Trek uniform. She went out to do the photo shoot, and the guys were like, "Get on out there." I'm like, I'm not a black geek, man. And he's like,
you're the minority in this group.
He's like, man, it don't matter. You're in the Star Trek uniform. That's your wife, right? I'm like, yes, my wife. He's like, get on out there. They like basically, they were like, it was just everybody was cool, right? And everything was inclusive. And actually, there's the Nerdy Weds, another friend of our call-in group. They actually have a YouTube video of the photo shoot this year.
Oh,
and
cool.
My 9-year-old son is front and center, right in the middle of the entire group in his little Newsy out costume. He was dressed like a Newsy from the Newsy movie, Broadway play or whatever. And they put him right dead center in the middle, and he was
loving it. I bet
loving it. Yeah, so that's so cool. I love that. And you always say, like, I mean, my wife's a huge nerd. She's a gamer, or plays RPGs and stuff like that. So she's had instances of going into game stores over the last 30 years of her life or more, where she goes in and the question is, well, are you shopping for your husband? Are you shopping for your boyfriend? Or what guy are you buying for? And she's like, no, man, I'm looking for an RPG book for me. I'm the GM. I need this book. So it's cool to see that diversity because you get better products, right? You get better production.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
you're hitting a bigger audience, man. You're surviving. You're keeping your company afloat, and
So that's cool. I mean, so Mick and Starla came all the way out from because I think they live in like Missouri or somewhere in the Midwest, right?
I want to say they're from Minnesota.
Okay.
I don't know. Somewhere in the
pretty hefty trap from Minnesota out to OrcaCon, right? So I mean, how big is OrcaCon? Like, how many people were there?
I want to say it was less than 500. It's really not a big con.
Right. So I mean, that's a fairly. I mean, they're well known in the game industry, or at least in social media and the content creation world. So for them to go out to this con, that's kind of cool.
Yeah, I thought that was very cool of them to do that. I know when I did get to play a game with them, with both of them. And afterwards, we were kind of chatting a little bit, and I was like, "Oh, so when are you guys heading back?" And they used to live in Seattle.
Oh, okay. So
and they have friends here, so they said we're gonna hang out for a little bit. We're gonna see some friends, but I can't remember their son's name. It's escaping me right now, but he was born and lived there for a very early part of his life before they moved. So they said, we've shown our son pictures of where he used to live, and he doesn't remember it. So we're actually going to drive around and say, this is where we grew, this is where you kind of had your first year of living. And so I was like, oh, it's very cool. And then, of course, they're like, we got to hit all the local, like Dick's Drive-In, which is like a cheap burger joint that's only here in Washington, So I was like, oh, yeah, well, you got to hit all those areas. And so it was very cool to see them there. And, I'll go into this more on Thursday, but they are... What you see on their YouTube channel is exactly how they are in person. Mick is boisterous and funny, and he's cracking jokes the whole time. And while he's playing a game, he's in your face, like in a good way.
Right, yeah.
And Starla's very, she kind of sits back, plans her attack, and then
kills everybody.
And then kills everybody, So it was just nice to see that they are who they are that you see on their YouTube channel.
And that probably explains they may have attended OrcaCon if it's been around a long time when they lived out there, or they still have connections to the area. So that's pretty cool. But it did seem like 30 games, man. That's like me at Dice Tower at Necro. I think I got about 30 games in at Necro last year, but it's awesome to just crank out. How did that feel, just cranking out game after game? Because I could tell when you were posting it in the Discord, you were just like, I could almost feel the smile, right?
Yeah, it was cool to get that many games in. I will say, I think about 10 of them were like very quick, rapid fire, same game. So like, I think I got eight games of where words in a row, which was funny in itself. And then toward the end of Saturday that I was there, it was like 2:00 in the morning, and I still had to drive home. And we're just kind of sitting around, playing. We just finished with Hansa Teutonica. Is that? I think that's
Hansa Teutonica. Yeah.
And we're like, okay, we got to get a couple other games in. So we played a game of Mino dice, but then even more people dropped off, and then it was like, okay, what else can we get in? And Ashwin broke out No Thanks, which I don't know if you've played that before.
Been a while, but yeah.
But it's basically secret bidding, and you're trying to prevent getting every card is a negative number. So you're trying to get the least, amount of negative numbers. And there's like some mechanisms in it. But we ended up playing like 3 rounds of that in a row. So even though I did play 30 some odd games, about a third of them were these quick rapid fire, but it was still fun.
You got to get into the quick games too.
Right. And it was funny because the werewords, I was just kind of walking around, seeing what's going on, and very similar to I think any other gaming con like Dice Tower East or whatever. There's signs that say we need X number of people, and this probably kid in his tweens comes up to me and says, hey, we're gonna, and I can say, I have a son that's on the spectrum. This kid was very high on the spectrum, but very polite, and we got this game of werewords going on. Would you be interested in playing? We're looking for a bunch of people, and I look over at the table and I see that his dad is there. And I've tried Werewolf once or twice. I don't care for it. It isn't for me. Not that I don't like deduction type games or hidden character games. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to give it a try. This is what I came here for, is to play games with people that I don't know. And this is the experience that I was looking for coming to this con. So I was like, yeah, let's give it a try. Went over there, happened to find a group of 3 people that were willing to play. So we had like, I don't know, a table of 6 or 7 people. And the dad ran it. Initially he was like the mayor. So like a quick overview of the game, you have a mayor, and then of course you have like hidden roles. You've got a werewolf, you've got a seer, and it's basically 20 questions going around the table. Yeah.
And the app is great for it too. I mean,
it's very good for it.
I believe the app is Eric Summer, I think, is the voice of the app. I could be wrong.
Is he? I don't know.
I think it. I want to say it is. We'll have to double check that and correct ourselves next week if that's the case. But I think Eric Summer's the voice of werewords.
Oh, that's cool. I didn't even know that. It didn't. I didn't put the 2 and 2 together if that's the case. But I could see it now that you mention it. But a quick overview is similar to how Werewolf plays. The mayor is going to pick a word, and it could be anything like roller coaster or ice cream or whatever it may be. And then the seer, everybody closes their eyes. The seer looks, sees what the word is. Everybody closes their eyes. Then the werewolf looks and sees what it is. And there are other characters, but we only played with, and then you have all the villagers that don't see what the word is. And the object of the game is, as you go around the table, you're asking basically 20 questions. Is this an inanimate object? Is it a person? Is it bigger than a bread box? It's basically yes or no questions. And the mayor is being quiet and handing out like green check marks if you're right, or red X's if you're wrong, or question marks if it's like an in-between. And the seer's job is to try and lead the people to the word, but not be known as the seer. Like, and then the werewolf is to try and get the people not to guess the word by throwing them off with the questions that they're asking.
You have to lie just enough. Right?
Just enough, right. Yeah. And then when the time runs out, everybody can talk about who they think the werewolf is, and then you vote 1, 2, 3. You point at who you think the werewolf is. If they're right, then the villagers win, and the seer wins. If you're wrong, then obviously the werewolf wins.
Yep.
And it was fun, It's out of the times that I've played werewolf type games, I enjoyed this one a lot because 20 questions. I mean, that was the most important part to me, or the most fun part was the 20 questions part, is actually trying to figure it out if you're not the seer or the werewolf.
Yeah, and I think so. I looked it up real quick. Eric Sumner did not do the voice. That's Mark Reese, but Eric did do the One Night Werewolf app. So he has done voiceover of one of the apps. I knew it was one of them. So, but no, I've played Werewolves a few times too, and I love it. It takes the seriousness out of it and makes it, and I think so right before Werewolf got really popular, where like everyone played it 24/7, I was into it. I played it a bunch, especially at the con here in Tampa.
Is this back when it was the print and play from the
kind of
one guy that created it?
Yeah, and it was just like it hadn't quite come out yet, and it was people didn't take it too seriously. A round would last 30 to 40 minutes. There would be quick kills, quick debate, quick voting, moving it on.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, it became like this phenomenon, and everyone played it. And then it was like people thought they were Sherlock Holmes meets, every famous detective in one thing, and like people would argue and debate for and one game would take 2 hours, and I'm like,
no thanks, man.
I'm out. And I think that's probably where a lot of people like you and I maybe get turned, and not speaking for you, but I think that's where I got turned off by it. I'm like, this should be like a 45-minute game, like max.
Right.
It's fun. It's quick.
Although I do want to play Blood on the Clock Tower. I want to get a full experience of that.
Yeah, I do. I'm willing to do that one. I'm just so fearful though, because everyone has this like, there's that the people who play Werewolf are great, but some of them take it too seriously, and I wonder if some of that population has transferred over to Blood on the Clock Tower, and that's
that's
sure
why
I like Werewolves. That's why I like Werewolves, because it's meant to be quick. You have a timer. The app forces you to move it along. You only have the 20 question type stuff, so you're limited in the time it takes, and so that fun aspect doesn't wind out of the game. Whereas the Werewolf games can just drag on and on if you don't have a good sort of seer overlord or whatever that's going to move it along.
So the app that runs it, you can set the timer on it. And I think for most of the rounds we were going 4 minutes.
Yeah.
So it would go 4 minutes, and then you have 60 seconds to debate on who the werewolf was. So I mean, we were burning through these rounds very quick, and like you said, even though we were playing the same game multiple times, it was fun every time. Because we were just moving along. Move one after the other. So. That was fun. And the only reason I mentioned that, the sun was on the spectrum was because I was the mayor this one round, and the word was washcloth. And the sun asked, is this organic? And I gave him a question mark. And then somebody asked, well, is it something that's synthetic? And I gave them a question mark, because washcloths can be made out of cotton or made out of,
Yeah, could be a million things.
And the son was what we would call in our family, you get on the train. Yeah. Our son, Morgan, he would get on the train and he would just harp and harp and harp on this one thing and couldn't get out of his mind. And the son was, as we're going around, the son's going, well, how can it not be organic and not be synthetic and blah, blah. And finally the dad was like, you just have to drop it, which I think it's good for him to be interacting with people, that aren't necessarily his age and, can move on from. And then dad was just like, you got to drop it. It's time to drop it. And even then, it kept going. Yeah. He's still on the train.
Yeah. And that's interesting. And I think that's good that you were there, because I mean, it's always good to have people who are understanding of it, of kids like that, or adults like that even, because it can be frustrating, right?
Yeah, and there was probably somebody there that was like, she was in her early 20s, and she was sitting next to the son, And she was talking to him at sometimes almost, I was thinking like, is this his sister? But it wasn't. Like, I knew it wasn't his sister, but she was just like, okay, you need to stop now. And I was like, whoa, like, you know, let's everybody bring it down a little bit. Let's just calm down, you know. But the dad was very understanding. And then once the word was revealed, washcloth, the son was like, well, you know, how can that be? How can that not be? And I explained to him, I was like, it could be made out of cotton. It could be made out of polyester. It could, you know, it's not 100. And I think like the light bulb went off.
Yeah.
And then he got off, you know, quote unquote, got off the train at that point. But yeah, it was. And again, it's quick, rapid fire. So a game like that, if it went on like 20 minutes, that kid would have gone out of his mind.
Right.
You know, whereas this, we can just move on to the next word. You know, it's not a big deal.
And that's cool. I mean, and that's what you need to. I think experiences like that are so important for young kids on the spectrum or not. Right. It's that socialization that's tough. And I think even I have a 9-year-old that's neurotypical, but even him, just sort of the couple of years of the pandemic and not having the social interaction that you can see sometimes where he's still not quite there. Like, where it's like, you need to calm down. You need to learn when to stop.
How old is your son?
He's 9, right? So he's
okay. So, I mean, these are his development years.
Yeah, exactly. And there's times when we're gaming and like the game that I was going to maybe talk about is Museum Suspects, right? And he was just getting, it's kind of like a Clue-ish game, very simple. But there was like, he was not getting it, like, that he was getting it, but I beat him like 3 times. We played like 3 times in a row last night, and he was just getting really frustrated with it. I'm like, you understand, buddy? I play stuff like this all the time, so
right.
I'm gonna know better. So Museum Suspects is, and maybe I'll just go into that real quick. Is there's a 4x4 grid of suspects in a museum, and they're animals, and there's pictures, and there's some of them wearing hats, and some of them got like cameras and different things. Then there's 8 clue cards. And the clue cards would help you eliminate some or most of those people. And you have 12 chips, and the chips have different numbers on them, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. In order to look at a clue, you have to put a chip down and look at and leave the number up. So if I want to look at the first clue, I put a number 1 there. Okay. And I can look at it and then eliminate. And then you can make a bet on who this with one of your other chips. So there's 6 rounds. You have 12 chips. So you're gonna look at 6 clues, and you're gonna look at you're gonna make 6 bets. The problem is once I've gone to a clue and I put a number there, if you want to look at that same clue, you have to put that number or higher, right? So that makes sense. I could go out there with a 6 right away and burn a 6, and then you can't look at that clue unless you're willing to burn a 6 also. And so he didn't quite get, like, when if he put down a 1 and then I immediately put a bet on somebody, he would look at that same clue. I'm like, well, you don't have to look at the same clue as me all the time. You can look at other clues, right, and move it around. Because you're going to get to see 6 of the 8 clues. And what, like, after the first game, he got real frustrated because there was multiple bad guys. All right. And I said, well, buddy, I told you, like, this 8 clues are going to eliminate suspects, but it may not eliminate all of them. Right. And he's like, you didn't tell me there would be more than 1. I said, the game says there could be none, 1, or some. Right. So, you have to, and you didn't tell me that. I did. You just didn't pay attention to me. You were looking, I told you, pay attention, right? I told you that it's going to eliminate some of the suspects. So, but no, it was a fun game. And I think when we reacted the second time, he immediately grasped onto that. And then the third game, the score got closer and closer. Because what it is when you bet on a suspect, if that person ends up not being eliminated, you get the points that you put on them. So you bid blindly on that. So you can.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So a lot of your bids, the early bids, are probably going to get eliminated as you look at more clues. So it's a fun little game. I think we played it just 2-player at first. So it was kind of easy to get a lot of the clues and see 6 of the 8 clues without having to really overbid for them.
Right.
I think if you play a 4-player game and you got 4 people looking at clues and what number you put down, that's where it's going to get really rough because you have to put at or higher than the person before you, so it could be a little tricky. But it was fun. It was a fun game. But it goes back to, like, trying to teach, how you pay attention, how you listen to say, don't focus. You were focused on looking for one suspect because you just assume there's going to be one suspect, but there could be multiple, right? So,
right.
But no, it was a fun game. And I had posted it in the Discord servers, and it was funny as Dice Tower had done a playthrough of it like last year on one of their extravaganzas, and it looked cool, and I'm always looking for a game that's fun. It's 1 to 4 players, and it's 8+, and it's like a 20-minute game, right? So it's quick. And then I looked at the box, and it was a Phil Walker Harding game. So I'm like, oh, look at that. Yeah, this guy's just
Praise
coming out
be.
with games, man. Praise be. Comes out with tons of games. But it was fun. It definitely is a light game, though. Like, this is not, I don't think, this is not a game I would recommend for, like, if you're a gamer fan, like, just a gamer, right? If you have kids or you have non-gamers, this is a good little, quick little small box game that play. And it's fun, cool art. Yeah, it's definitely more
Right.
family to lightweight game, very lightweight. So, but it was fun, and it was a good game. And I think we'd be getting. It was interesting. It comes with like little investigative pads, right? So it's got the pad where you're gonna have to cross off like the suspects and things like that. But it's shaped kind of like investigator's notepad that you see on
very cool. Yeah.
So that's cool. Although that's hard. Is like with the little kid, he's trying to hold that so you can't see it while bidding on chips. So I ripped a couple of pages today and laminated it so he can use a dry erase marker instead of
nice.
Instead of pencils. So that's always good.
Yeah.
So.
Very cool.
Yeah, it was fun. It was a fun game, and I've gotten 6 or 7 plays in so far this year. So I mean I think that's a good start to the year. But 30, yeah.
Well,
crush
again,
it out, man. You got your top 20 already for the month. You're ready to go.
I'm not ready to put all of these games on the list because not all of them does.
Yeah, I'm like,
I think we learned a little bit from our list last year where, especially I know I saw it when we were getting close to the end of last year where I was just like, how did this game get this high up on my list? And just, I couldn't play it again in order to work it down most of my games, so.
Yeah, it's hard to get that game. I want to really think about it because I don't want the game, like I'm thinking like, I'm going to play a lot of the games I played last year again, right? I'm going to play Castles of Burgundy. I'm going to play Concordia. I'm going to play Dune. I'm going to play Arnak. I'm going to play, whatever.
Well, you didn't play Dune last year,
That's
right?
true. I didn't play Dune, yeah. That's one of that's true. But, like, Castles of Burgundy has long been my number one game of all time. So if I play it again this year, am I really going to put it right? I've already played it once this year. Is that going right to number one on my list again, and then that's it the rest of the year?
Probably.
Like, I think I'm going to try to divorce myself from, like, my games of all time versus game experiences this year. Now, Castles of Burgundy is probably going to be pretty high because it was a really good game. It was Sam, Rob, myself, and Jim, and I ended up beating Jim by the 1 point. And it was like,
see, that's a great game, though.
And
You had good feels, I'm sure.
Apparently, it's the first time Jim ever lost a physical version of Castles of Burgundy.
Wow.
So I was like, and it was like 148 to 140, or 248 to 247. So it was like pretty good.
Oh, that's a great game then.
It's a great game, right? And it was the first time I got to play my fancy deluxe copy with all the acrylics.
Even better.
So not only is it my first game of all time, but it's also, that was a great game experience. So I'm going to try to like look at the top 20 list this year as far as just my play of that game at this time. Where does it stack amongst my games played for 2024? So this way you don't, like, because I think I put, I played Concordia a couple of times last year, but it was mostly teaches, which I didn't necessarily have a lot of fun with because I'm teaching the game. But I put it high on my list because just Concordia is one of my favorite games of all time. Well, that wasn't a great play of it though. So I'm gonna try to bring in. I think that might help me bring some balance to the list as far as the usual games floating to the top, and it's hard to break into it type thing. So we'll see. But
so hear me out, because this just popped into my mind. What if when we added games to, like, I'm thinking about doing this actually, and I don't know if Carlos and Rob would be on board with it. What if when we add our games, we add them from the bottom up? So that our list isn't starting at 1. Let's say we played 5 games, and one of them, like you said, it's a Castles of Burgundy type of game, like for you. Okay, well, you put that on your list, and then, say that's first on your list, comes in at number 20. And then you play another game that isn't so good. Okay, well, that one comes in at 19 and it bumps that one up to 9, or it comes in at 20 and then bumps that one up to 19.
Yep. That
way we're not, I don't know, I'm kind of thinking like, because when you think number 1, it's like, was this really the best, blah, blah, blah. Whereas this could be like, okay, well, I really like that game, but it really didn't hit as well as it did like it normally does. So it comes in lower, but it's still bumping up the rest of the games.
Yeah, I think that sort of tracks what I was thinking about doing. Like I'm not gonna have 20 plays this month, right? So I'm gonna need, like, even if I start building the list this month, it's not gonna hit 20. And I was gonna be like, I'll put Museum Suspects on my list, but I'm just going to put it at number 20 because it'll be one of the first games when my list fills up in the 20. It'll probably, because I like the game, but it's not gonna be in my top 20 of the year. But it'll immediately go to like I kept a separate list of games that I play with my family or my kid. That I think is good. And I think Rob even mentioned last year trying to do like maybe a top 10 2-player games, or something like that. Like have different
that'd
lists.
be very tough for me, man.
2-player, because you do a lot of like the trick takers and things.
I do a lot of group type games. Yeah,
group games,
it's going to be very hard for me. But anyway,
But it was like for Rob, who does a lot of 2-player games, he would do a 2-player list. For me, who games with my kid a lot, I would do a kids list, right? But we'd still have our base 20. But I like your idea of like filling it in from the bottom up. Don't put a game right at number 1. Start everything at 20. It either slots above the 20 or slots below the 20 until the 20's full, and then things start falling off. I like that idea, and even if Carlos doesn't do it, I mean we can't do it that way. So
screw that guy.
Yeah,
what does he know, right?
I don't know.
He puts all his games away, by shoving them all in a box. With
oh my god, did you see that? I did. Oh my god, I was so. I posted on the Discord server that I felt dirty because I pulled a Carlos. I was 3 Kings Day. So this past Sunday, I had to take down all the Christmas decorations, which I hate because your house feels so empty afterwards when you take it all down. Like it's just.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I know. I'm kind of okay with it after like a day, but like that first day, anyway, I needed my gaming table because I like to, put a towel down and I lay out all the fragile ornaments and then put them away. So, but I had a game set up and I'm like, oh God, I want to put this again. Sweeped it into the box and immediately I was like, oh. I didn't like the way that felt. And I'm like,
felt like Carlos.
It felt like, I was like, I did not like the way that felt. But and then like that night, I like, okay, now that I'm done for the day, I'm just gonna take that game back out. I'm gonna unpack it and pack it back in the right way. So I couldn't let it go. I couldn't let it sit a day. I couldn't do it. But I will do Carlos put away method a little bit. Like when I had folks over for the game day, when I had Rob and Sam and Jim over. We finished Castles and they were all packing my fancy version back up the way, fully. And I said, guys, just, we can just throw that back on top and put it aside and I'll just put it away later today, because I think there's a little bit of a hybrid there of like, let's get the game away quick. It may not be perfect, but I'll circle back to it after the game day and fix it because I'd rather kind of get a middle ground.
You're putting it away, but you're not putting it back on your shelf that way.
Right, and not putting it back on my shelf. It's going to sit to the side. And Carlos will put it away on the shelf and 2 years later pull it out and just be like a bomb went off inside. But hey, to each his own, So that's fun. So. Any other things you want to hit on real quick or?
We're coming up on 48 minutes.
It goes faster
50 minutes. It does. It goes a lot faster. This is all new to me here. I think the only game that I probably would want to touch on because I think everybody else at the table had played this game and it's like a classic and Hansa Teutonica.
Yep.
It was my first time playing and it was funny because when there's a group of us playing a prototype and we kind of finished and, Ashwin was like, what do you guys want to do next? And one guy said, "Oh, what about Hansa?" And everybody at the table was like, "Oh yeah, let's get that table to the table." And I was like, in my mind, for some reason, I kept thinking, what's the one game the Mayan the
Zulkan or Teotihuacan?
Yeah, that I kept thinking that game, and we went to another table, and he pulls out the box, and I said jokingly like, what's up with that game? And he's like, dude, this is Hansa. This is what we're going to be playing. And I kept thinking to myself, this isn't what I was thinking it was,
This isn't South American, stuff.
Where's the Mayans on
an old white guy on a box game.
Yeah. So, but again, I'm game to play anything once. I don't care. So he's, Ashwin set it up and he explains the game. And I'm like, okay, this is kind of cool, but I'm okay with a ton of cubes. I'm 100% fine with this. But as we're playing this game, and I really did like it, I enjoyed it, and I came in last place, but it doesn't matter. As we're playing it, everybody that walked by said something to the effect of, oh man, Hansa, that's one of my favorite games, but man, is it brutal. Everybody said that. And then every time they would say that, Ashwin would go, do you have a copy of it? Oh, of course I have a copy of this game. And I kept thinking, I've never freaking played this game before in my entire life. And all these people own this game. And, even Mick from Our Family Plays Games is walking by. He's like, oh, man, Hans, I freaking love that game. I've never played this game before.
I'm right with you. I've played it once, and it was last year at like middle, maybe October, August, October.
And what did you think of it?
It was all right. Like, it was both Rob and I had not played it yet. So again, the three of us, neither of us have played it. And Jim had it at the game day, and it was most people had left. It was just me, Rob, and Jim, and we were like, all right, let's play one more game. And Jim very happily like, oh, let's play Hansa. This is a great game. He had just learned it himself, and he'd been playing it a bunch, and he busted it out, and he told us the rules, and we started playing, and I'm like, okay, it's good.
Yeah,
I think I definitely. I'll say this though, I do want to play it a few more times because I think I probably missed a bunch. I focused on one kind of thing, but there's a ton of games from that time period when Hansa first came out that are similar or have kind of similar mechanisms or similar look and feel. It was a good game. I enjoyed it. I don't know if I'm sold on the, oh my God, this is such a great game. Like all this, everyone that walked by going, this Hansa, that's such a great game. It's like, maybe, I don't know. It came for a game that came out a long time ago.
Yeah.
It certainly is still in print, still played. So it's obviously a good game, but it's not sort of, to me, in that zeitgeist of Concordia, of Castles of Burgundy, of, I can name a few other games like that, but it's definitely a game I'll play again and probably learn more and like it more the more I play it. I can see that game growing on me.
And I agree with you. I think the first play, it's, any game for me, typically the first play is just like, I'm trying to get my marbles, about this game. What's my strategy? I don't give a crap if I win or lose. I just want to get the basics down, make sure I'm playing it right for the next time that I play it. That's how I always view a first play, typically. But I can see this game growing on me, like you said. And, like during the con, I also played Brass Birmingham. It's no Brass Birmingham.
Yeah.
That's how I kept thinking, like, after I played Brass, which I don't think I've played Brass since I lived in Florida. Like, that's how long it's been. It's been years. And as soon as we started playing, I was like, you feel at home, and it's just like, I love this game. This is so good. And I just kept thinking,
you're just, my brain's gone. It's melting.
Yeah. And I was just like, Hansa is no Brass to me, at least at this point.
Right. I can think of like Rococo is a game, another game from that time period of the Brass and the Stone Age, and those that came out. That's another game that I would put way above Hansa Teutonica.
Yeah. And right now everybody's like cursing at their, phone listening to us or whatever.
You got to be controversial, right, to get the likes and clicks, right?
I agree. So anyway,
it definitely is a good game. But I'm glad you got to play it, because I think that's, if we do meet up at Dice Tower East, that would be something that, like, all right, let's get me, you, Rob, and Jim, and let's get it to the table, or let's get some of the crew together and sort of play it where we can
pretty much hop right in and play.
Right in and sort of know what we're doing, and even just, I think at some point, like the second play, because that'd be probably the second play for most of us. Talk about it. Like, all right, what's going on here? What are you doing there? Like where's the strategy in this game? Because I can see that there's a lot of strategy there too. There's a lot of moving pieces, and I think,
and there's a ton of interaction.
Yes,
because you're constantly bumping people's cubes, and people are, if you are maintaining like one of the 5 areas where you can upgrade your board, you're gaining points every time that somebody does that, or claiming the trail or whatever it is. So I love that aspect of it. Yeah.
Does it need a fancier version though? And I know this is such a bougie question, because you think about Rococo, you think about Castle Burgundy, you think about other games.
Here's the funny thing:
Brass, Brass, Lancashire, and Birmingham. Like,
yeah,
Hansa looks the same as it did 15, 20 years ago, whenever it came out. There's been no new art at all.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing is, and I'll touch on this more Thursday, just to drop this. Ashwin basically said his inspiration for the Wolves was Hansa.
Okay.
Because there's like a bumping mechanism and the scoring mechanism, like as far as like what triggers the end of the game. And that was the other thing about Hansa, is like, hold on a second. When you get the 20 points, that triggers the end of the game. What the hell does the scoreboard go all the way up to 100 for? And sure, I mean, the entire game, Ashwin didn't have, I'm not exaggerating. By the time the end of the game came around, I think Ashwin had, before we did end of game scoring, maybe 4 points. And I'm like, there's no way this guy's going to win. And he just freaking went around that board so fast because of everything else, like all the connections that you had. And I was like, oh, okay, that's how this game is played. That's where you're getting your points from.
Yeah.
So
yeah, there's playing to trigger the end game, and then playing for the actual end game scoring. Yeah, I like that.
Right.
I really did like. Right. We gotta play the Wolves too. I really like the Wolves. I've played it. Played it at Dice Tower East and liked it a lot, and played it once or twice on BGA. Now I'm trying to remember the rules on BGA, and so it's a little clunky to play on BGA, but it's a fun game. I'm looking forward to it.
I have some inside information on that too that I'm not allowed to talk about.
Oh, there you go. So, all right. Yeah, we'll talk about that offline.
It may make it out, in the future, in the near future, but yeah. Anyway, so that was the highlight for me, as far as what we can talk about. Anything for you this week?
No, just we're getting some gaming in. I'm trying to play a couple of games a week with my family this year. So I'm starting to just set up games and leave them on the table until they get played, type thing. So we'll see how that works. It's working okay so far. We've got a couple games in, so we'll go from there.
The Rob technique,
just leave it out.
Yeah. And
then hopefully we'll have a game day in a couple of weeks. I know that for those of you in the Tampa Bay area, I believe the Tampa Gaming Guild is having a flea market third Sunday of the month. And then after that, anyone who came to the flea market can stay in game. So I'm sure a lot of the crew will be there. So if you're in the Tampa Bay area, look up the Tampa Gaming Guild. I think it's the third Sunday of the month. They're having that flea market kind of auction or sales or whatever, and then we can game afterwards. So that'll be good. And with that, I'll say, make sure you guys want to call in. You want to at least listen into the Thursday show, because I'm sure Mike's going to be talking a lot more games and a lot more OrcaCon and all the other influencers and famous designers and that he got to meet and talk with, and which is cool. That's the best part about going to conventions, is getting to meet some of the people that you see online or talk about online, or meet some of the designers of the games, which is really cool. So
yeah.
If nothing else from you, Mike, I think
just one quick thing. You mentioned about the Gaming Guild here in Seattle. I think it's the first weekend of February. You can find out more information. But anyway, we're getting a math trade set up to take place in probably 3 weeks, I think it is. So if you go to the math trade website, I'll have more information Thursday. I can't remember what the URL is. But if you go there, look up Seattle. We're like maybe fifth one down on the list as far as worldwide math trades that are going to be going on. Look that up. We're finally getting our lists together, and join in if you can, man. Yeah, we always like free trades, game for game, that type of thing.
Nice. Have to talk about that in a future show, because I've never done a math trade, but I've always been interested in them. So
this is my first one, and I'm 100% lost up until about last night. So
yeah, good.
Yeah.
All right, sweet. Well, like I said, everyone, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for coming back to us here in 2024. We're hoping to do this at least every other week, so twice a month. If we can do it, we'll do it more than that. But certainly join us on the Thursday Night Live call-in show. That's the bread and butter of the Beans and Dice sort of network or podcast, whatever you want to call it. Please call in. Tell us about what you've been gaming, how you've been gaming. And then certainly join our Discord server. It's on our YouTube channel. The link is right there. So you can certainly come to the podcast channel. Let us know how we're doing, positives, negatives. We always want to hear. And if you have any thoughts of future shows, or if you're a member of the Beans and Dice community, you want to come on a show, let us know. We'll work it out. So.
Absolutely.
And with that, I'm Wayne.
I'm Mike.
And we're the Beans and Dice Podcast, a podcast about how we
game.
Thanks for watching the Beans and Dice Podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe.